Welcome back to Score the Podcast, presented by Spitfire Audio. We keep outdoing ourselves on the show. Last couple weeks, we've had guests joining us from the UK, but we're now joined by our furthest guest ever on the show as we record here. He's an Oscar-winning composer for films like Slumdog Millionaire. He also scored 127 hours, and he's also worked with Robert Kraft on those films as well. We're so excited to welcome A.R. Rahman on the show. A.R., thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. A.R., listen, what a treat. Personally, a treat just to see you, even though I'm seeing you on the other side of the globe right now. But just before we started, we were talking about how it must be late for you. You are 12 and a half hours ahead of us. Yes. So that means it's nighttime. Are you in Chennai?
I'm in Chennai, yes. I'm with the family quarantining.
Oh, yeah, amazing. It must be so different, but what a treat to have you on the show. It's really been a dream of mine. And frankly, what we had originally planned, of course, was that we'd have you here after you performed in Los Angeles in May. But tell us, is that tour canceled, postponed?
The tour, I think, in the interest of the safety of people, and we care for our audiences, and of course it's impossible to do a show. Even at that point, I felt like we should postpone the show to next year, this whole tour, because people come there with a lot of love and expectation and trust, and then I do extra prayer for people who come for my concerts, and like they deserve that because they come with all the love and expectations and enthusiasm for my concerts.
Can you tell our listeners what an A.R. Rahman concert experience is like? Is it film music? Is it your other music? Is it both? What can people expect if they come out next year when you come back?
So back in India, I started in 92, 91. And the way music is done here is a composer should compose the songs and the score, right? So the songs are all over the place. So like they are folk songs, Indian folk, Western discos, to motivational songs or club songs and everything. So these songs, I've done probably over 160 movies now. So some of the songs have become chart busters and they become part of people's lives. And when I go for these shows, mostly these songs are performed, less of score and most of songs, and more of songs. And what we do is I find a band which we sit and work and rehearse with them to find new interpretations or new interactive call and response kind of things. So it's not the same thing which they hear, but it's the same thing, but it's not the same thing. More musicality and more fun on stage, more surprises. So that's my show.
The songs actually, I didn't really realize that. The songs originally first appear in a film. And that's how they get first known. That's the radio in some ways. And then
exactly. So what we do is we release the songs. It used to be like that, at least when the age of cassettes and CDs. The songs used to come at least a month before, and they'll get popular on radio. And if the songs are liked, people come for the movie like twice or thrice to experience the visual and dance and music and the mix of the songs. So they're fans of even mixes. Oh, I love that mix of the song, so I go for
this. That's really interesting because in some ways that ties way ahead to the fact that I actually had the opportunity to participate in the remix of Jai Ho.
Yes,
and
of course.
I always wanted to ask you, and I've never had the chance until today. I was called by Jimmy Iovine and Ron Fair at Interscope, where we had the soundtrack of Slumdog, to come to the studio and participate in the commercial single mix of Jai Ho.
Which by the way, Jai Ho is the Oscar-winning song of Slumdog Millionaire.
The huge international smash that A.R. wrote. And They informed me when I got there that they had decided to replace the singers that you had originally recorded with the Pussycat Dolls. And I remember thinking, you're kidding, right? I just thought they were literally, why would you do that? The record is perfect as it is. But for a lot of reasons, some of which maybe aren't for airing on this television show and this podcast, they had an investment in the Pussycat Dolls. I've never had a chance to ask you, AR, how did you feel about that? And did they ask your permission?
Well, let's take, in my mind, there are two things running up. First of all, you have this crossover soundtrack, which doesn't happen usually.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, if it's just a movie song with a very alien language for the English people, it's going to reach probably limited audience.
Mm-hmm.
And a thing like that would make it even more popular. And then through that, they will come to the original. So my mind was working that way.
Yes.
And I think I was right. I was right because I remember going to Australia the next year, and then almost everyone recognized me because I've come in. I purposely wanted to be in a very small amount in that video, just like 5 seconds or something. I said, don't put me more and put me separately. Even though Nicole was amazing to work with.
That's so interesting because I actually went to Austria probably 10 years later. I was in Vienna, and I remember walking into some kind of electronic store, and Jai Ho with the Pussycat Dolls was on, and everybody's kind of, and I thought, boy, this is the mark of a hit, that this many years later, you're hearing it. I do remember one other thing that I discovered when we put the original tracks up on the console and we were soloing them. I didn't realize, AR, and now I fundamentally understand how incredibly great a programmer you are and how high tech that recording was. I assumed this was going to be a room full of players and we're going to have room sound on tracks. I didn't realize that it was recorded the way it was, and it sounded like there was incredible sequencing going on. Had you approached Indian music and authentic recordings with sequencing and computers since the beginning?
Yeah, okay, let me tell you the history. My father bought the first Korg SH700 in Singapore in 1973-74. So he apparently got a free ticket to Japan. He's from South India, and he used to work in Malayalam movies. Malayalam is the next state, Kerala state, where he was an arranger, composer, a musician, and all this stuff. And he was loved. He would work in 4 or 5 places at the same time. He had a Morris Minor car, and So he passed away in 76, I think, overworking, not sleeping, not eating. He wanted to buy a house for his family. So he did all that, and he left. I was 9. And I had all this gear. I had the synthesizer. I had Yamaha double manual keyboards, Farfisa organ, all that stuff left. And my mother, being a very intelligent woman, at 26 she was widowed, and she found that everybody said, you have to sell all this stuff, put it in the bank, get the interest, and live your life. Now your husband has passed away. She said, no, my son is going to learn this. I don't know what faith she had in me. And yeah, this happened, and then I was left with all these toys. I grew up with playing all these synthesizers and programming this stuff and getting electrocuted also sometimes as a kid. And so in 84, I was intrigued. I was playing like small sessions with my father's friends, like one of the gentlemen who recently passed away, M.K. Arjunan, and Mr. Ilayaraja. So I had bought a music computer called the CX5 Yamaha computer, intrigued by it, and it was a very, very tough one. You had to feed everything in it, the gate time, velocity, note, octave. Like probably for one note, you had to feed 10 things. And that was my first computer, And then I bought the MIDI keyboards, like Juno 106, which is a Roland, 2 of them.
Beautiful.
and tried, sequencing, and then got my first major gear, which was the MC500 Roland and the S50 sampler, blah, 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 all the stuff.
Yeah.
Then my life changed. I felt like empowered, like this is the future, man. I can sample stuff, I can create my own, I can...
How are you learning to use all this stuff?
That's a good question. We didn't have there was no internet, of course. There was no... So to even see what's happening in the Western world, there was one shop around 45 minutes away by cycling, which would have a magazine called The Music Maker from England.
Oh, wow.
And I would go 4 times a month to see whether that mag has come, because it used to get delayed. It used to come 3 months, 4 months afterwards. And I'd go buy that and read it. And now I was telling my kids how easy it is for them to download a PDF or to learn something on YouTube. It was not the case before. And then figuring out, and the DX7 especially was a monster.
Yeah.
It's FM synthesis, algorithm. Okay, all that stuff. And then came a time where I worked with some directors who insisted that I was doing jingles, commercials.
That's what I was wondering.
So I had built my small studio by then, which is probably the next room, the other room. And that liberated me. I felt like this is something which I never, the sense of freedom that you can do your own compositions without being judged, and you can only just hear it. You don't have to give it to musicians who will frown their face if it's not sounding good. So I was basically an introvert, and all this gave me the sense of freedom to explore and experiment and fail and also get up and start kicking. And so this is my history. So my whole thing started with, and of course I was a big admirer of Switched on Bach, the Wendy Carlos record,
yes.
and Vangelis and John Williams, and Zimmer did the Black Knight or
Dark Knight.
Dark Knight.
No, not Dark Knight. The first very long back, a beautiful hybrid score with brasses.
Black Rain.
All sampled. Black Rain, is it? Yeah.
Oh,
I think that's
hybrid score, right?
Hybrid score. So that's one of my favorite. It just opened up, and then there was another one called the Gothic, which again I think was Thomas Dolby.
Oh wow!
She
blinded me with science.
Yeah, it had a strange operatic voice. And anyway, so all these things inspired me, and of course, so that led me to find my melodies through Indian classical, Western classical, folk, and at the same time trying to get the production of what it deserves in India. Because I said, like, when we listen to Western music a lot in India, we used to at least, and why don't they listen to our music? And then I was trying to find reasons why they wouldn't listen to, because it was all monophonic, and it was it was cut off at 7K because optical would never take the frequencies, right? And so when I started coming and I had a 16 track, I said, I don't care about optical. I will do 2 mixes, one for the movies and one for audio. So all that happened.
That's great.
Sorry for the big answer.
No, that answer is fabulous. And I wonder, did directors embrace your new approach? And did they feel that a more pop and a more radio-friendly approach to film scoring was appropriate for their films?
Good question. So initially when I was doing stuff, a lot of people will come and ridicule, this one cell, you need to use, the violin, the tablas, and you need to do all that stuff. Nobody's going to listen to the stuff. And then until I met my dream mentor, Mani Ratnam, whose first film I scored, and he came in and said, he was very unsure. I don't know why he was unsure. Then later revealed that, he said, whatever you played to me sounded so good. I didn't know whether it was the sound or the melody. So I had to go and in my brain, I had to, split it up and check whether it's a melody or you're conning me with this beautiful sound. So actually it was both, right? So it was a combination of things, which was a new approach, because before, to record music, you needed a lot of musicians. Of course, I love musicians. And in my first movie, I felt like it's going to be cult because of the director. Like whatever, he had so many followers, and whatever he did was so cool at that point, and even now, that it's going to become a cult. And I don't want people to think that now, computers are come and replace musicians, right? So I made sure that I used brass and strings and Indian rhythms and everything, so that when that becomes a success, I was sure it'll become a success. But a lot of people said, no, it's not going to happen because this sound is different. And so that difference actually kind of clicked, luckily.
Yes.
And I'm here where I should.
Do you remember in those first few sessions, did you do pre-records and then have the orchestra put on headphones and play to program tracks, or did you trigger it all live? Because that was a big moment in film scoring, where the orchestras would sit down and instead of hearing silence and a click, they heard programmed drums or synths. Which did you start with?
I think from 87, 86, this whole programming drum sequences had already come into the Indian film industry. We used to have some program bass lines and rhythm section, and orchestra used to be on top. So the orchestra was used to all this stuff. But I always get extra inspiration when I see the orchestra. And you won't believe this ridiculous kind of work. So some of the songs are scored, and we write the orchestrator comes in and he writes a score, and then he goes and gives it to the orchestra. But since we had 7-hour sessions here, and it is some of the composers, like more old school composers, had this amazing way of having the orchestra, making them like a live loop. So the rhythm section will be playing something, and they'll say, oh, go ta-da-da, ta-da-da, gamapa, gamapa, sariga, sariga, and sa-pa-pa-pa, gama-mama, sa-pa-pa-pa, gama-mama, sa-ni-ni-ni. So they give these notes like this in Tamil, and they would start playing that stuff. And when they're playing that stuff, the flute will be, you go like, tu-tu, tu-tu, sa-ga-ga-ri, sa-ga-ga-ri. So it's like almost like a live Ableton looping happening, And so that fascinated me, and I would also do the same technique when I would have the orchestra in front of me and sit with the harmonium and try to get phrases which I'll just sing, and then one person will just start jotting down and they'll start playing that stuff. And in fact, if you watch the documentary of Bombay Dreams, you'd see some Marius and me produce the cast album of Bombay Dreams with Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Right.
And you could see some of that circus in that.
That's interesting. It's like having a rock band where you just, they call it head charts. You just, hey man, guitar player, play this. And drummer.
It is fun.
But you'd never think
it is fun, but very expensive though. It's too expensive to do that.
AR, I want to go back a little bit, because first off, your story about riding a bike to get a magazine that may or may not even be there 4 times a month is
a week.
A week is pretty awesome. And so you're teaching yourself how to use these instruments and all this technology. When did you start getting into like working professionally in music? You mentioned TV jingles, but like, how did you progress into film?
So I used to play when I was 13. I used to play popular film music as a one-man show with the Mini Pops rhythm machine and chord synthesizer. So chords on the left, melody on the right with the rhythm box. So I used to be like this. There was a program called Wonder Balloon, and I would come in this kids section on Sundays, and it was national also. It used to go national. So I was a bit popular on and off. But the real deal happened when I finished high school. One day my mother came to the school. I was going from a higher secondary, and she came. I was like, what happened? Because the second time, my mom, and the first time, of course, I had the bad news of my father's death when I was in the 4th standard. Now my mom was coming, and she's standing outside, and she said, there's somebody who's willing to take you as a music player, like a session player, and he's got a lot of recordings. I think we need this for the family. So you need to quit school.
Wow.
And so I said, are you crazy? I was thinking myself, but I respect my mom a lot. So I succumbed to that, and I went to this old gentleman called Ramesh Naidu, and he was a very extremely moody person, I would say. If it doesn't like something, he'll throw things on people's face. So people used to give me scary stories like that. But he was very kind to me. And that's when it started. I think it was 84. And 85, I started working with one of the most respected composers, Ilaiyaraaja, who was also one of my father's friend, and he was also working with my father. For a year and a half, I was working with him, and he's still revered as one of the most biggest legends in South India. And what is the question? Sorry.
Oh, just I'm curious.
Oh, yeah,
you're getting to it. You're coming through this process of like being around these composers and sort of learning the business side and how everything works, right?
But didn't you write the Airtel jingle? Isn't that where the director of Roja
that's
heard
after
you?
becoming popular, and that's in 2001, I think.
Wow, it's recently.
Yeah,
and it's been a big 20 years.
Yes.
But did you get accepted into Berklee at some point?
Okay. Yeah, let me tell you the story. So we were the backing band. We had a band, all the studio musicians formed a band. I think it's around 87. And that's when we met L. Shankar, one of the amazing violin players who worked with Peter Gabriel and John McLaughlin. And so he said, why don't you guys back me up? And with that backing him up, we learned a lot of studio techniques when working with him on the album and everything. And so that led to me asking Shankar, said, I've heard about Berklee. Do you know anybody there? I said, yeah, I'll get you this prospectus. And he gets me the prospectus and then he gives it to me and said, oh, this is my future. I told my mom, I'll build a studio for you. So you rent it out and I go to Berklee and study and come. So when all this happens, I build this little studio on top of my here. And when I was ready to go, my first movie offer comes in and says, like, and you get this biggest director, like he's like the Spielberg of India. And he comes in and says that I'm interested with your sound and your melodies, and so let's work together. And I said, okay, I have to ditch Berklee, take this. And of course, like Confucius say that you involve someone, then they learn better. So he was, in a way, other than music, there's so many other things you have to learn in film scoring, right? And most of the things I learned is from him, the building blocks of the foundation of how to tackle a scene and how to be innovative. I mean, I had it all, but he kind of cherry-picked things and placed it in a way and explained to me why this works better, why, and he would play me stuff like Western classical music and Carmen and everything and say like, why don't we do something like this? So it was a gift to get somebody who's like a mentor and who's paying you.
Were you talked out of doing this though? I mean, that seems like at the time going to Berklee versus working on a movie. Do you think you were ready for that, or was anyone trying to steer you toward going to Berklee and not making that decision?
No, I think Berklee was not that popular. Like very few musicians would know about Berklee at that point of time. And I wanted to learn. I was interested in jazz and all this stuff. But then something told me that, because I was in the core of the industry, belly of the beast, but my interests were all outside, African music, jazz, and American scoring, and Italian. And so I think, in a way, I felt like I wouldn't be pigeonholed into just a jazz player or. So this was more, and also as an Indian composer, you're expected to be a Michael Jackson, John Williams, Hans Zimmer all put together. So not like they don't pigeonhole, oh, he's a film composer, he does only this genre of music, which is not the case here. We are given the liberty, okay, if you can, do it. We're not going to judge you. It's only by the end, whether it gets popular or the impact of the movie, people judge you by that, stuff. So that was a blessing.
It all worked out because Berklee gave you an honorary doctorate several years later. And
I have so many friends in Berklee. And,
of course.
It's one of the most inspiring institutions ever, right?
And we have currently, as part of our team, Carol, who not only went to Berklee, but Carol saw you perform in Boston. Carol, didn't you see
Yes, I did.
the Indian ensemble?
2015 Symphony Hall, Boston. I think I originally went because a lot of my friends were performing. My friends were in the Berkeley
Yeah.
Indian Ensemble, and
So
I was just blown away.
the YouTube links of that are still popular. They're getting millions of view
Yeah.
counts. Amazing.
Crazy.
And the way they interpreted my music was also beautiful.
Did you come rehearse with students and teach them how to interpret the music, or did they?
No, I think what's nice is like when my music came in, there's another important thing. When I came in, there used to be little bands which used to take film songs and perform. And they would spoil my music so badly. And they would say, oh, it's all computer music, we can't play that. So I think Berkeley was one of the first performances I saw that they'd taken everything out of respect and then enhanced it even more with musicianship. And that was lovely.
That's so nice. It's interesting that it's a beautiful way to talk about what you've given back to students, because I remember when we worked together, I think that the KM Music Conservatory was just starting.
You're right.
I remember, because you will be able to correct me on the years, but I think you said that next time I get to Chennai, of course I'd never been, I should come visit your school. And I didn't know what exactly that meant, but you explained that you had just started a school, and the school now is huge.
It is. So it started in 2008.
Yeah.
And now we have almost 300 to 400 people.
Wow.
And we
Is it
teach
residential?
classical.
Do they come and live there, or
Not
are they
yet.
local?
No, they do live, but we don't have the dormitories and all the stuff. It's just a school. There's like a college of technology, music, and tradition. And so the whole idea of that is like what I went through. I learned technology, I learned classical music, and I learned film scoring, everything. So you get a more broader perspective of musicality, or how to be in this real world, surviving as a musician rather than being left out.
I would like to apply. I would like to apply and attend.
Please come.
The reason I asked
there?
if it's residential, because I wondered if there's like a small bedroom nearby that I could crash on. I would like to learn technology, Indian classical music, and music in Chennai. That sounds like a dream come true.
You're welcome.
Oh,
Do you
thank
teach
so
there,
much.
AR? Are you an instructor?
Sorry?
Are you an instructor?
I'm
at
not.
the school?
I facilitate. I sign the checks for pianos and technology.
Yes, I bet. Is there a film scoring track that you can go to in addition to all that? Do they learn how to sync music to picture and score scenes?
No, not yet. Not yet. I think right now we're also opening up a branch in Mumbai, which is going to do all that stuff.
I see. Because I was going to volunteer, of course, to come help set that up. That sounds like a good idea. Of course, we met on Slumdog Millionaire, and suddenly at Fox, there was a lot of excitement that we had a film coming in with basically the coolest director and the coolest composer in the world were working together on a movie. And
that's sweet.
We were
How did that
excited.
happen?
Yeah, I never
How
knew.
did you guys connect?
Yeah.
So it's pretty strange, actually. I think it's destiny, like how they say in Slumdog Millionaire. So Danny had tried to get in touch with me through a couple of people, sent me messages, and it was the most busiest year for me. 2008, I was scoring these big movies, and we'd miss each other, and he had shot the movie by then. And one day, he just emailed me, and I said, I'm in Mumbai, I'm in this hotel. He said, I'm in the same hotel. So
What?
we meet in the lounge, and he gives me this DVD and says, it'll be a great honor if you score this. He gives it to me, and I'm exhausted because I'm doing so many movies. I'll see it a week later and call him and say, this is amazing. And this is like, 3 of my favorite movies put together, And so he says, are you scoring? I'll try. And he had, I think Danny again uses a lot of different songs from different elements put together. So I said, I want to score the whole movie. When I do a score here, I do the songs, I do the score, everything. He said, if you have the time, you can. You're welcome. And he said, and then I started sending him ideas one by one. And he would just pick that stuff. And we met in London and finished the rest of the stuff. I think the whole thing finished in 3 weeks.
Wow.
Was there temp music on that DVD? Had he temped in ideas and spotted some of the scenes?
There were a lot of temps, but then the ones he took the stuff, he made a lot of adjustments. He changed the places. He did a lot of changes. And the way he uses music is also very good. When it comes in, it's really in your face. It's not a wallpaper. It's used as a character. And that's what I love about Danny's taste also. He's so far ahead in music, eclectic taste.
All his movies, the music is so important. And who knew that Slumdog would become the phenomenon that it was, that you would win 2 Oscars?
Yeah, was this the first time that your music was really introduced to like the United States? Because that movie just exploded. But I'm curious, were you known in the U.S. before that for your music?
I'll tell you another story. So I was kindly invited by Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber to write a score for Bombay Dreams, which is a musical on my name. It was called A.R. Rahman's Bombay Dreams, and in 2001 and 2, it was big. So it did 2 years in London, and then it went to Broadway. In Broadway, I think it did a year, but there were some changes made. They said, for American audience, we need something changed and all those stuff. So it didn't work the way it should have. And I remember Andrew was very upset by that. And so he was the happiest. He said, they didn't get you 10 years back, now they got you. It's great, AR. And then he still fondly remembers that whole incident of how Bombay Dreams went to London, and from London to America didn't do well, and how this is actually a payback for all of us.
And then on 127 Hours, an amazing movie as well, did you score it in India? Did you meet Danny in London? Where did you physically write and record that? Was it the same process as Slumdog?
So when 127 was happening, I had a tour actually. I was doing the Jai Ho tour. And I would, wherever we would, the weekends were busy, of course, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And the other days would be, I would just set up the computer in whichever place we parked. And I would jam with the guitarist. And so we got the score like that. And then after that tour, I think I spent again a couple of weeks in London, near my Tufnell Park house. And he would come, take the tube and come in. And so the score was done again, same way in London, 2 weeks, and we finished the score after collecting all these pieces and ideas and putting it all together.
How did your scoring career or your just career in general change after doing these films with Danny? Was there more of an interest from Hollywood? Were you getting calls for other types of works? Because Slumdog Millionaire made a huge splash in the United States, but also worldwide. Did your career change at all from that?
It did change. And I think what happened internally for me was the power of the fame and my work actually led me to find other ways to explore musicality. Like, my problem with getting commissioned in a work was you get typecasted. Now, okay, AR comes and he does Indian work or he does orchestral work, and usually these were not challenging enough for me. And I was thinking, why don't I start writing ideas? And of course, people have to go from step one. And then it's now 10 years since I've written my first story, which the trailer is out now, called 99 Songs. It's a Hindi movie. And that's coming. So this whole change of going to film production and to probably write ideas where music can do a different role, do a different characterization rather than the same kind of things I get, do 5 songs or do a score which is Indian based. So I wanted to change that. And
is 99 songs and score by A.R. Rahman?
Yeah.
As well as written by, but I understand that you didn't direct it, but that you're starting now with Le Musk to direct.
Oh, well researched.
A very adventurous new project. Can you tell us a little about that? Because I watched the trailer, and it looks ridiculously interesting and visually compelling as well as musically.
And what a big shocker! You're at the forefront of new technology,
as you always are. I mean, though, it's funny that we can look back at the beginning of this podcast where you talked about inheriting all those keyboards and learning to program them. Now it sounds like you've moved into virtual reality and film directing. How is that coming along, and where are you on the project, and when can we see it?
So, first question, did you watch it on the Oculus, or did you watch it on the VR headset?
I just saw it on a laptop.
He just has his Crafulous, those glasses there.
Yeah. Is it actually, that trailer is viewable in VR?
Yeah, the VR trailer is different. So you can go to a Jaunt app or somewhere. It's already there, out there. I think I can send you that. And you can watch it on Oculus. So that's 360 3D VR. And so what you watched was just the making. You didn't watch the real trailer.
Oh, okay.
But so this whole thing happened when, we were just jamming. My wife and I, we were sitting and we were jamming. It's like, it was, I think, 2015. I had, so she is a big fan of perfumes, and she can spot any perfume. She can name any perfume. And she's got this incredible ability to do that stuff. And so I was thinking, you know what? We should mix perfume, or we should mix smell with cinema. Though I saw that people have done that in the past in 60s and 70s. And this was before I knew that VR existed. And this talk happened, and I said, why don't we create because laser projectors had come in, and I was thinking, why don't we have a projection from left, right, center, and top, and have the 6 cameras doing stuff and the Centrac, and to build an experimental theater in Chennai. And I spoke to some of my friends in LA, and they would say, yeah, it's possible. Meanwhile, one of my friends, who's the CEO of Odyssey headphones, he came in and said, yeah, I should check this out. This is called the VR headset. And so I'm not going to wear that stuff, and threw it off. I threw it off. And after a month again, I said, like, what is that stuff? And I bought a phone and put that in. And when I saw what it was, I said, oh my God. So that idea which I had of building a theater is not necessary, because this is even more further. This is like probably 50 times more than cinema, because it's so real, and when it's done right. So I watched around 200 different VR clips, stereo, mono, and then came to a conclusion that what works and what doesn't work, how people, like normal filmmakers, how they do mistakes of doing certain things which makes you people dizzy. And so the script was written according to, it's a basic, very, very simple script, a murder mystery, and how to entice, how to phrase this, how to take people where they've never gone before, literally, musically and visually. And so I wrote the script with this in mind, and we did a previs with just dummies here, shot it all over in Chennai, and then cast it in Italy, and went to Rome and did this in 18 days. We finished the whole shooting with 3 camera setups, one with the Jaunt, one with 2 RED cameras and smaller VR devices. Little did I realize that the stitching would take 3 years.
Yeah, I bet.
To get the quality. Initially they said, oh, you just upload it on the internet and it's going to come stitched, and we were not happy with the quality. So we literally took, so each second is 60 frames in that to make it more smooth.
Yeah.
So we are almost in the last 4 months of post-production, and this happened.
And then do you score it?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Well, just so our listeners know, AR's the only guest we've had who's offered to shoot himself in 6K and send us the file. So that's the kind of technology we're working with. We are going to take a quick break, but we have much more to talk about with AR. Stick around. We'll be right back.